Is everything about ancestors all about light, or is there anything dark when it comes to ancestral connection? Why am I saying this? There is something about the mind and defending whatever that it believes. If today you go to religion like Christianity, for those who have ever read the Bible, in the Old Testament, the God of the Bible have been seen sending out floods, killing people, taking sides. But whenever you ask this Christian, that Christian will defend that God with everything because their mind is being challenged. And whenever the mind is being challenged, the mind usually creates something like a guard or defense. One thing about this world is all about duality. Everything that exists has its own polar opposite. If positive exists, positive cannot exist without negative. If love exists, love cannot exist without hatred. Love cannot exist without betrayal. Love cannot exist without rejection. It is the rejection, the betrayal that usually give meaning to the love. When we are talking about a dark side, we are not saying that it is something that is evil. We are not saying that it is something that is negative. The dark side, it is just the shadow aspect of something. In most cases, when it comes to spirituality, you have ever heard me talking about the connection with the ancestors, going back to the roots, honoring our ancestors. Spirituality, especially like African spirituality, it is something that is based on the view of ancestral connection and getting people back to their own roots. But in most cases, most people only talk about the light side when it comes to ancestral connection. What if I told you there is a dark side when it comes to ancestral connection? There is a dark side when it comes to the ancestors themselves, and many people don't talk about it. Now in this video, I'm going to be exposing and talking about 15 dark truths when it comes to ancestral connection. And something that you need to understand, whenever I'm talking about dark truth, I'm not talking about something evil. I'm not talking about something negative. I'm just highlighting the shadow aspect when it comes to ancestral connection. One thing that you need to understand, we don't worship our ancestors. We only honor our ancestors. Worship is something that is found in religion, because even us, we are a continuation of our ancestors. We are a continuation of our ancestral lineages. Some of us carry the spiritual energy of their ancestors. Some of us reincarnate as their ancestors. And one day we ourselves, we will become those ancestors. The first dark truth when it comes to ancestors and ancestral connection is something that is called spiritual attacks. There is something that you need to understand. Not all ancestors used to walk in the way of the light. In most cases and in many traditions, those ancestors who did good, those ancestors who left a great legacy within the community are the ones who were celebrated. They are the ones who were summoned, and they are the ones whom people used to connect with. Some ancestral spirits are rogue ancestral spirits. Some of these spirits, they are used in what we call dark magic. Some of them are used in what we call witchcraft. You have ever heard of people being possessed? You have ever heard of monitoring spirits? You have ever heard of dark magic? Now, when it comes to dark magic, the dark magic practitioner usually summon these ancestral spirits, these rogue ancestral spirits, and use them when it comes to attacking other people, causing harm, or even performing their ill wishes. Number 3 is something that we call generational traumas. Most people in this world, they usually deal with things that they don't even know where they came from. They usually suffer from traumas that didn't originate from them. Some of their ancestors, they refuse to heal, and they pass down those traumas to their coming generation. If you don't heal from your traumas, if you don't heal from your wounds, if you don't heal from your pain, what you will do, you will end up passing those traumas to the next generation. When it comes to women, women have what we call the womb. The womb is a portal. When it comes to the womb has 3 layers. You have the physical womb, the spiritual womb, and the emotional womb. Now, in the emotional womb, this is where we have all those hidden issues. We have hidden pain, wounds, and even traumas. Now, if you don't heal your womb, you will end up passing these traumas to your children or to your coming generation. Most of these ancestors, they refuse to heal. And the most of things that we carry, it is not our own pain. It is not our own burden. It is inherited burden. It is inherited pain. Most people in this world, they deal with inherited things, something that they don't know. pain they carry, they don't know where it originated from. It is through ancestral connection. The third dark thing when it comes to ancestral connection is something that we call curses. In most cases, when it comes to the society, people have been taught to fear things like curses or even karma. One thing about fear, something that you believe and you fear, what you do, you give it authority over you. Most family today inherit cycles of misfortunes, poverty, addiction, broken relationship, or even generational curses due to unresolved ancestral behaviors or even due to words that their ancestors left. Number 4 is something that we call inherited guilt. When it comes to inherited guilt, this is where the descendants may feel responsible for their ancestors' wrongdoing. When we are talking about inherited guilt, or when we are talking about ancestral wrongdoings, we are talking about things like violence, oppression, and these ones can manifest as shame, self-sabotage, or even traumas themselves. Number 5 is something that we call spiritual burdens. In most cases, when it comes to the connection with ancestors, we usually perform what we call rituals. But one thing about rituals, before you perform any ritual, ensure that you are spiritually protected, ensure that you are well grounded, and ensure that you are spiritually strong. If you come from an ancestral lineage that usually practice things like witchcraft or even dark magic causing harm to others, what that ancestral lineage do, they usually create something that is called spiritual debt. Now, most of these ancestors, in order to harm others, they usually enter into spiritual contracts with other energetic entities or ancestral spirits. Now, in these spiritual contracts, there are those things that are need to be met. There are those conditions that they are usually given in order for those conditions to be fulfilled. Now, if they die without fulfilling the spiritual contract, these energetic entities, these rogue ancestral spirits, they usually hunt the coming generations, their descendants, until the spiritual debt has been settled. Number 6 is something that we call inherited family patterns. Things like abuse, neglect, or even dysfunctional dynamics, they often repeat across generations. They usually create an entrenched cycle that is hard to break. And the reason why they repeat, it is because in these communities, in these traditions, people are taught something that is called belief. If you believe something, you create it. Number 7 is something that is called inherited addictions. In most cases, you will find that substance abuse addictions, they usually repeat across generations. What do I mean? If you find your ancestors were drunkards, there is a high possibility that even in your own family, there will be a repeating pattern of drunkards. Something like alcohol, it is something that has spiritual attachments, and that is why it is called alcohol. The name alcohol comes from the Arabic name alcohol, which means flesh-eating spirits. In most cases in alcohol, you will hear things like spirits and jinns. These spiritual attachments, they are usually passed on to the coming generations, and until you cut yourself from that lineage, it is very difficult to overcome some of these addictions. Number 8 is something that we call scarcity. Things like generational poverty, they may persist due to something that we call systematic barriers or even inherited scarcity mindset. In some cases, there are those ancestors who usually limit opportunities when it comes to their own descendants, because some of these ancestors, they used to believe that their descendants must follow their way, they must follow their beliefs and how they live through life. But everybody have their own way. I have my own way, you have your own way, your parents have their own destiny, and everyone have their own spiritual path. We are not the same. We cannot be the same. You cannot expect your children to follow the path that you followed, because when it comes to destiny, everyone have their own unique destiny. Everyone have their own divine purpose and even a mission to fulfill. Number 9 is something that we call outdated beliefs. There are some ancient traditions that whenever you follow them, they will lead you into harm. There are some ancient practices that whenever you perform them, they are outdated and they will leave you clinging to your past. Not all ancestral practices and beliefs were there for the benefit of everybody. Some of them, they were there to favor others, and some of them, they were there to oppress others. Number 10 is something that we call health vulnerabilities. This one has to do with inherited diseases. This is where you find that in a certain lineage, people usually suffer from a certain disease. That disease has been passed down through genes from one ancestral lineage to another, from one generation to another, from parents to children, from ancestors to descendants. 11 is something that we call burden expectations. There are those ancestors who demand a lot when it comes to their own descendants. There are those parents who demand a lot when it comes to their own children. Now, descendants may feel pressured when it comes to fulfilling their ancestral dreams and uplifting the family honor. And this one can lead to burnout or resentment. 12 is something that we call spiritual blockages. Negative ancestral energies may block the descendant's spiritual growth, manifesting as something that is called misfortune or even stagnation. 13 is something that we call inherited fear. Traumas like persecution or displacement can instill that fears within the descendants, limiting their freedom. 14 is something that we call cultural disconnection. Things like colonization or even assimilation may sever the ancestral ties, leaving descendants having what we call identity loss or cultural disconnection. And the last dark side when it comes to ancestors and ancestral connection is something that we call spiritual ties. Most people, when it comes to ancestral lineages, we are tied spiritually. Our spirits are tied because of that connection of blood. Now, if you're dealing with something that is generational, be it curses, be it diseases, or be it misfortunes, you need to cut down those ties. You need to free your spirit from those ties. And that is one of the easiest way in which you can escape these generational things. And this is something that religion does. When you're converted to something like Christianity, they usually cut your ties from your ancestral lineage. This one can come with advantage or even disadvantage. It can come with an advantage if you come from a toxic ancestral lineage. When they disconnect you from your ancestral ties and your ancestral lineages, they usually bind your spirit with the cult, that is the religion. And your spirit should be free. Your spirit should not be binded. And that is why when it comes to awakening, awakening usually frees you from those toxic ancestral ties and even these cults in the name of religion. The only way in which you should be binded spiritually, it is if only that ancestral lineage is not a toxic ancestral lineage. When you connect with that ancestral lineage spiritually, what you do, they will be guiding you, they will be offering protection, and even what we call divine connection. So in case you come from a toxic ancestral lineage, you need to free your spirit from that lineage. And that is everything that you need to know when it comes to the dark side of ancestors and ancestral connection. One thing about awakening, awakening is opening your spiritual eyes, helping you to see where there is illusion, where there is trick, where there is lies, and where you should not be blind when it comes to the truth. Just as you see many people being blinded by religion, even you yourself as an awakened person, if you refuse to see beyond the limiting beliefs, there is no difference between you and a person who is in religion. If you have watched until this point, like, share, and comment on this video. Peace and love.